Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us on this webinar for productivity and workflow solutions, focusing in on the transport and logistics market. I'm your host, Jack Hughes, the Sales Director at Cymex. Together with our core partner, Honeywell, we spend a lot of time exploring how customers maximize productivity, lower the cost to serve, and provide excellent customer and customer experience. With our panelists, we'll be talking through how to find the right software, hardware, and service solution for your business. Let me start by sharing the agenda and introducing our panelists today. We'll start with an introduction to Honeywell and some of their solutions which are focused around the T&L market. For this, we have Adam Gibbons from Honeywell.
Hi, morning. Adam. Morning, everyone. Morning, Jack.
Adam's a strategic account manager for transport and logistics and manufacturing. After that, we'll be discussing how to deploy, support, and manage devices using a combination of Cymex and Honeywell services. I'll be covering that part. We'll also cover a newly launched content management sharing application called Shareable, which is a Cymex product. We're really excited to bring that to market. And then finally, we have Rob Woodward from Allied Bakeries, part of ABF. He's the logistics project manager who we've worked with on a project. Hi, Rob. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Jack.
So we'll have a Q&A session at the end, so please feel free to enter your questions in the Q&A window throughout the webinar, and we'll come to them at the end. So without further delay, I'll hand over to Adam to cover off the Honeywell part.
Marvellous. Thank you, Jack. So I just wanted to start by just providing a brief overview to who we are for those that haven't come across us before. So we can read the figures on the slide there, but we have circa 100,000 employees globally, $33 billion in sales last year. If we just look down the left, we're sort of split into really sort of four key areas. So the one that I'm concerned with and that we're going to be discussing here today is the fourth one down, which is safety and productivity solutions. But as an example, we have a very large aerospace division. Pretty much any plane that you've ever been on will have some form of Honeywell technology within it, whether it's navigation system, propulsion, landing gear. But as I said, we are going to be focusing on safety and productivity solutions. In terms of some facts and figures, our technology is evident in circa 10,000 manufacturing plants globally. We provide smart building solutions to over 10 million buildings globally, and we are actively present in over 10,000 warehouses and distribution centres globally as well. So, as I said, specifically around our productivity solutions and services business. So, what does that include? What does it incorporate? So, it's mobile computers. It's ruggedized barcode scanners. We also provide asset identification solutions in terms of printers, labels, RFID tags. We also provide voice solutions. This is quite an interesting area that really drives efficiencies throughout warehouses and distribution centres, whereby an operative would have an earpiece in and will be talked to in terms of what to pick, how to pick it, how many should I say, where that pick is. It avoids the inefficiencies around using a device, looking at a device, putting it down, pick, looking at the device again, pressing the device, checking it. It really drives efficiencies, and we estimate the average warehouse and distribution centre can gain around about 25% in terms of productivity gains by using voice solutions. And then software, which underpins all that, which has been a sort of key focus area for us for the past probably 5+ years. I mentioned earlier on in the presentation that we have circa 100,000 employees globally. What is a little known fact is that over 9,000 of that 100,000 are software developers. So software plays a huge part of our business currently. And in terms of focus markets, as it says across the bottom, distribution centres and warehousing, retail, transport and logistics. So a little on our partner Cymex. In terms of why would you talk to Cymex when when you're considering a Honeywell-based solution? Well, Cymex hold our highest level of accreditation. That is a platinum partner. And essentially, what that means to end users is that Cymex commit to a program of training on an annual basis, and that covers pre-sales, that covers post-sales, that covers the sales community, but they invest heavily in terms of formal Honeywell training, and they also hit revenue targets, and that revenue target is $1 million per year. So again, hopefully that gives you an appreciation as to how kind of close a partnership we have with Cymex. But that platinum partnership, what does that give to Cymex? Well, that gives dedicated technical support. They also have a dedicated channel account manager, and it also means that partnering with Honeywell, that we can be, if I can put it, sort of commercially very aggressive and creative working with Cymex. We really sort of strive to understand the customer's challenges, what their issues are, using technology to kind of overcome those issues. And by having that kind of understanding of customer challenges in their business, as I said, it means that we are happy to provide that aggressive pricing support for Cymex. And again, why would you choose Cymex? So I think I've covered most of the points there, but they've got extensive experience in the sort of our key verticals, our key markets. That's transport, logistics, retail, manufacturing. But I think that the sort of key takeaway is that they are a trusted, safe pair of hands. So as I said, in summary, in terms of the Honeywell Cymex partnership, they can provide. They tick a lot of boxes that you as end users would be looking for in terms of technical capability, commercial pricing, and experience having deployed a whole host of these solutions before. So I just wanted to now touch upon some of the sort of range of products and solutions that we have here at Honeywell. I'm not going to go through, this isn't a hardware pitch, but what I wanted to briefly kind of convey to you is a couple of uniques that we have out in the marketplace that sets us apart from people who do organizations that do similar tools. And one of those uniques is what we call our Mobility Edge platform. So you can see on the screen there on the slide, you can see a number of devices going from rugged PDAs right through to tablets and vehicle mounted devices. Now, the differentiator with this set of devices is that they're all built on the same platform. So they all have the same chipsets, they all have the same processors. But so what? What does that mean to end users? Well, essentially, it means that if you have a mixed estate, which most customers do, they might have a whole bunch of CT60s, they might have some RT10 tablets, they might have some vehicle mounts. Well, what traditionally used to happen would be that you would deploy your gold image, your build onto a device. You would have to rigorously test that device to ensure that it had the security settings, it was locked down, it worked as expected and as needed. But then, if you wanted to roll out some tablets, you had to go through the same testing process on the tablets. Well, you don't need to do that with Mobility Edge because it has that same common platform as I mentioned before. You test on one device, and you can be certain that the applications, the device will perform across the entire range. So it really reduces that time and investment needed by end users to go through that testing process, and also means that speed to deploy is very high, is very quick. I guess another key differentiator from the Mobility Edge range is that it's currently supported through Android 12. We are the only manufacturer who can guarantee that. Others will commit to it, but we will guarantee. So you purchase a device today, and we guarantee to support it in terms of security patches and updates, etc., through to at least 2028 currently. and we are working towards getting that through to not just Android 13, but Android 14. So giving you probably a further 3 years. So in terms of sweating your asset, in terms of a strong return on investment, again, you know, these devices have longevity and drive that return on investment. So again, Mobility Edge is our premium range. We have an entry-level range, which is our ScanPal range. Those devices are on the left. They don't quite have the same level of service life cycle, so it is slightly shorter. But I guess for organisations who are a little bit more price sensitive, again, we have another range of devices which are again fully rugged devices that are slightly more cost effective, if I can put it that way. So again, another uniqueness that I wanted to touch upon is what's called our flex range scanner. So, you know, challenges that some organisations have is that, and you can just see my colleague Javier on the left, he's got a device with a flex range scanner. He's going to demonstrate the scanning range on it. So he's going to do a scan here from what looks like 5 or 6 inches. What you can't hear is how quick. You can see the light flashing, but you can't see how quick it is to respond. He's now doing it again from about 10 feet or so, I guess, and then he's doing it through glass to a barcode, which is probably about 10 meters away. The point is that the flex range scanner is very small. It fits in a little device. That's a CT60, so you don't need a big device footprint. And it also it's very snappy. So rather than having to choose a short range or a long range scanner, the flex range scanner will do it all. It's a very cost effective and as I said, drives efficiency and productivity gains through an organisation. So in terms of our software-based solutions, operational intelligence is one of those. So operational intelligence is essentially an asset management solution. So, you know, what does that mean to organisations? Well, what we've found, you know, through speaking to customers for the past few years, is that batteries, for example. So it has smart battery analysis. What does that mean to customers? Well, as we all know, batteries and devices do degrade over time. An average battery life cycle is probably 2.5 years, that sort of timescale. And what we were seeing a lot of organisations doing is, after a couple of years, if they had 1,000 devices, they'd literally buy 1,000 new batteries to replace those. Well, actually, some of those batteries might last 3-4 years or so. So the organisations were wasting a whole bunch of capex replacing batteries that don't need to be replaced. So with the smart battery analysis, the operational intelligence will tell you which devices and which batteries need to replace, therefore saving you a whole bunch of costs. Finding devices, quite often in warehouses, you know, devices are lost because an operative will leave it lying around, finish their shift, will forget about it. Well, we have technology that will essentially wake that device up. Operational intelligence will be able to tell you whereabouts in the warehouse that device is, and as you get closer, it will start pinging and making noises and flashing. So again, saves you essentially having a larger buffer stock because of lost devices. Drop detection, so we can identify through the accelerometer in the device. We can identify when devices have been dropped or thrown, which therefore presents training opportunities, if I can call it that. And I guess that sort of one of the key ones in terms of you know a return on investment and driving down that total cost of ownership is the health crisis response. So what we were often seeing was that, you know, through our repair loop, through our RMA process, end users would send devices back to us. We'd interrogate, we'd look at that device, and there'd be no fault found. There'd be nothing wrong with it. However, that device is out of circulation, out of use by the end user for a week, a couple of weeks or so. Therefore, end users have to buy a larger buffer stock to accommodate, you know, devices going through the RMA process. Well, with that health crisis response, it does some diagnostics on the device. So that reduces the number of no fault founds and therefore reduces the amount of buffer stock required, therefore reducing the amount of capital investment required. So again, it's a very interesting solution, which we'll happily talk to you about outside of this forum. And then Farah. So this is essentially it's a SaaS-based solution. It helps really with real-time shipment ETA. So if you as an end user through this, the past sort of 12 months of 12 months plus of lockdown, if you have had a home delivery, and some courier organizations will send you a text in the morning, an SMS message essentially saying, this is your 1 hour time slot. If you want to change it, change the day, change the delivery location, change your safe place, please respond, and it takes you to a web page. Well, essentially that's what Farah does. So it also does the inbound and the outbound logistics. So if you are a manufacturer, you're expecting the shipment of raw materials, you can track that raw materials, and really, as I said, it gives visibility of goods throughout the entire supply chain, right from raw materials through to delivery to end users. That obviously drives customer experience and customer satisfaction, and it also increases utilization of your assets, so your vehicles, by its dynamic scheduling and routing. And again, quite happy outside of this forum to sort of have conversations around that.
Great, thanks for sharing that, Adam. Just to remind everyone, you can ask some questions in the Q&A box. Now we're moving on to the Cymex solutions. So just a brief introduction to Cymex for those of you who perhaps don't know us as well. We very much position ourselves in the market as a mobile systems integrator. And what we mean by that is we bring together primarily 4 different product stacks into one solution to then ensure that our end customers have an end-to-end one-stop shop type solution. So the 4 categories that we work with are software, hardware, services, and connectivity, and consist of the solution that Adam just spoke about with the likes of Farah. We also partner closely with the likes of Locus on that, and it's more than just an ePod application, which many of you watching this will already have. Both tools are a lot more powerful than that in terms of allowing you to look at the strategic importance of where to put your distribution centers and how many vehicles to have at each of those distribution centers, depending on what the throughput and volume is. So you can have a look at a strategic level, how does that look? You can then also look at a tactical kind of level where you're considering, peak periods, for example. So around Christmas or Easter, a lot of businesses have peaks of, in terms of transport requirements around those times. So you can model different volumes going through the network and see, right, how many more vehicles might I need at which depots during those periods, as well as obviously the day-to-day routing and scheduling, where the system will take the jobs that need to be delivered that day and order them and sequence them in the right order for the driver, but also allocate them to the right depot, and taking into account things like driver skill set where applicable, etc. as well. So it's a true kind of line of business application. On top of that, we've got some applets as well that help with identifying health issues on the devices and training requirements, etc. From a hardware perspective, fairly self-explanatory. Obviously, the mobile devices that Adam's spoken about, the accessories that go with those devices, basically to create a platform. The software is the brains of the operation, if you like. The hardware is the means of getting it out into the field, and making sure that is done succinctly and smoothly is really key. I'm going to skip services because I'm just about to talk about that in more detail. So onto connectivity, we've got partnerships with all the main networks in the UK, as well as global partnerships with other networks outside of the UK. And we've got 2 or 3 different options of how we can service our customers. So we actually have our own billing platform, which enables us, and we buy at a wholesale level, which enables us to create our own bespoke tariffs for our customers, which ultimately means that the wastage is minimized. Therefore, it's a more cost-effective solution. Talking more in detail around some of our services, we split our services primarily into deployment and post-deployment services. So just to pick out a few key ones on this list, Gold Build is the master copy of all the software and settings that sits on a mobile device management platform the majority of the time. So that's really key in making sure that the devices that you're deploying are, A, have the right software on them, and B, are secure from both the security perspective, but also you don't necessarily want your drivers to be able to access other applications or content that is not key for their role. So that Gold Build creation is key to an effective deployment. The staging is the application of that build onto the device. So we take each device out of the box and enroll it most of the time via Android Zero Touch, which we're accredited to do, which enrolls the device into the MDM, which then installs all the applications. But also the staging process involves physically provisioning the devices, so applying screen protectors and cases and asset tags and such like. Onto post-deployment services, we've recently launched a fully technical help desk. So all of our help desk operatives are technically trained on the relevant MDMs that our customers use, which means that our help desk are able to fix the grand majority, mid 90s plus of faults remotely, which then ultimately reduces the cost of ownership to you, our customer, by reducing the number of swaps and downtime that is caused by issues. For those devices that don't or can't get repaired or resolved remotely, like physical damage, for instance, we operate a repair and next day swap service. So device breaks, log a ticket by 3 p.m. We turn up the next day with a replacement device that's already fully configured. We physically swap those devices over, take away the faulty device, and use the likes of Honeywell for their repair loop for physically repairing that device. It then returns to buffer stock. So again, that means that your operation is able to continue even when there's faulty devices with a minimal downtime, which is critical. Then finally, we've launched a few years ago now, probably 3 or 4 years ago, Cymex Hub, which is our centralized management platform. So it's the window, if you like, into interacting with us as a business. So that's where you as a customer would go to log tickets for repairs or swaps. You can also see various information about the state and whereabouts of the devices, utilization, etc. But one of the key parts of that is asset management. And without stepping on Adam's toes with the solution that he spoke about earlier, the two solutions are complementary. And the asset management part of Cymex Hub allows you to see the whereabouts of all your devices and what status they're at. So we can see how many are in the field by depot or by location. We can also see how many in the repair loop, how many are in transit either to or from the repair loop, how many are in buffer, how many are lost and stolen, etc. So it means that these devices are and do represent a significant investment for a business. So keeping track of where they are and what state they're in is key. So here's some graphics on Cymex Hub. So on the right, there's the device homepage, which shows the OS versions and Android, iOS, and Windows, but also within that you can see which version of those operating systems the devices are on. You can also see on the bottom right hand corner of that image on the left an image of obviously the UK, which shows the heat signal map for 4G connectivity. So that enables you to start thinking about, right, I've got good signal on EE in Bristol, not so good signal in Cornwall, so I might choose to roll out a different network in Cornwall versus the rest of the country, for example. And on the right, there's a service dashboard. So our customers get live, instant feedback and information from how we're performing against SLA, which means there's nowhere to hide for us. It keeps us honest and enables our customers to really kind of see real-time information around what the trends around repair and our whatever services that they take from us are. And then onto Shareable. So Shareable was only released about a week ago. It's been born from one of our key customers asking us to solve a problem for them, essentially. So the challenge that the customer had was they're in the tool hire space, so they're hiring plant and machinery to both trade and Joe Public. And the challenge that they had was, how do we ensure that safety messages get to the people that are hiring the plant machinery, especially, and how do we record how they've received it and that they understood it. You can obviously write something down on a piece of paper and get them to sign it, but that's obviously a bit old hat and difficult to track and not very informative. So we went away and developed a content sharing application called Shareable, which what it does is takes any kind of media, so whether that's a video, a PDF, whatever kind of format that is required, and deploys that to all devices in your estate. And we've also had a feature you can see on those pictures there, that at the top of the screenshots it says external or internal. External, the difference between those: external, you can forward on the content to a third party via email or text message. Internal, it's internal only, you can't share it beyond that device. So you can see that who's read it, who's seen it, and who's importantly signed to say, yes, I've consumed this content, which is especially important for things like HR or health and safety related content. So yeah, they're the key features and benefits. And one of the questions that we get asked is, well, how is this any different from email and text? I think the key part is you can control what the content is on the device. So it's not a case of hitting send and it's out there forever. You can delete or modify the content, and you can also, like I said just a second ago, record who's seen what and have a capture a signature to ensure that that's properly recorded. So finally, on to the last part of our webinar today. So we have Rob, as I introduced earlier, here to talk about his experience for when Allied Bakeries transitioned from a paper-based process to a digital solution. Good morning, Rob. Hi.
Hi, Jack.
So, Rob, would you mind starting by letting us know kind of what caused Allied Bakeries to kind of start the journey? What were the challenges you were looking to solve?
Okay, so we've been on a path of investment for a number of years, starting sort of at the beginning of our operation. so our whole mainframe manufacturing warehouse, and then we took a look at our transport operation. And as you mentioned there, we were running a paper-based system, which, although is still used widely, quite frankly, is getting extremely outdated and proved to be quite cumbersome. So we're making over 10,000 deliveries a day. Each of those deliveries have multiple pages on a delivery note. It's a duplicate copy, one for the customer, one for us. So there's a whole raft of paperwork going out every day that then needs to be managed back at our sites. So 12 locations, and then they have visibility of that paperwork that's been signed by our customer. We have a shared service centre in Liverpool where our customer service teams and finance teams sit, who then don't have visibility of that. So that was always a difficult one with regards to sharing information around the business when you start off with one hard copy back at a site. So very difficult to integrate across our business. Lots of paperwork being faxed, scanned, moved around for discussions with other central teams. The archiving on the site was quite difficult. So when you start to look at all the paperwork that needs to be retained, that needs to be managed. And the sort of final one that we looked at is all this paper that's being consumed throughout the year has an impact on sustainability as well. So we do quite a large piece of work for our parent company, ABF, around our carbon footprinting, like a lot of companies do. And then we become quite conscious of the fact that we're printing and using millions of sheets of paper every year. And just in the delivery note aspect of our paper-based system, we were felling the equivalent of 8 football pitches of trees a year just to feed our paper for our delivery notes. And those trees, in terms of the carbon that they consume in a year, was the equivalent of 2% of our complete logistics footprint. So from an environmental perspective, it's quite important, but also just from a business moving forward was the reasons why we needed to bring up to date really our transport operation.
Sure, sounds like a fairly big mountain to climb. So what was the process that you went through once you had identified those challenges and decided, yeah, we need to do something about this? What was the process that you went through to select the solution that you landed on?
So we'd already at the early stages, we'd already sort of identified pretty much the pod software that we thought was appropriate for our business. Within the ABF group of companies, we have a bakery company in Australia that was already embarking on this path through their own sort of investment program, and the software that they were already using, although their operation is similar to ours, there are some differences. But so we're pretty already set on going with the similar ePod software. So what we were then trying to find was a partner that could supply us the hardware and manage that for us on a day-to-day basis, with the repairs, the swap outs being a seamless activity, and with the other obviously added value points that that sort of vendor could bring. And then looking at the equipment, I suppose we were at that stage quite naive to the kit that was out in the marketplace. So a lot of discussions were held with obviously the vendors around the benefits of the handsets. And I think it falls into 2 camps generally, the Honeywell suite of devices or Zebra suite of devices. So we then, after the core sort of project team within the Allied Bakeries sort of central teams, we then brought in the site teams to start looking more importantly at the hardware that they would be using, and the decisions were then taken after that.
That sounds good. Good to involve the people on the ground that are actually going to be using the device. Often find that if they're not involved during the selection process, it can be resistant.
Yeah, and it was interesting because when I mean, I suppose, Adam might disagree, but I mean, I think, technically when you look at the different devices on the marketplace, certainly to, an end user, say an end user, a logistics company like ourselves, there's very little to differentiate it. They seem to sort of do pretty much the same sort of fundamental things. When we gave the different devices to the site teams, and I think we involved 50% of our sites, we had about 6 representatives or groups of representatives from the sites. They were given a CT40. So through discussions with likes of yourselves and the Honeywell team, it was felt that CT40 was probably the more appropriate device. The CT60 was probably over and above what we needed. And then the equivalent Zebra device, I think, was the TC57. So the sites were given both of those devices to hold and play with. And all 6 teams unanimously come back and said they preferred the look, the feel of the CT40.
To be fair, Rob, I'd wholeheartedly agree. Actually, it's very easy to kind of just get a spec sheet and that device, it does exactly the same, but it's actually getting into the user's hands and that sort of user experience. And one of the reasons that I touched upon the sort of flex range scanner was that it's until you get things into the hands of users and get that feedback. And as Jack said, without their involvement, it's a case of, quite often IT are kind of pushing some devices down, and the operational guys are kind of, well, I've not been involved, and they're not bought into it. So no, I'd actually agree. I think the best way to kind of start that selection, or not start, but confirm that selection process is getting your hands on the device in the first place. Right?
Yeah. That was the sort of path we went down, Jack.
Sure, and in terms of selecting Cymec, we've spoken about why you selected Honeywell and the CT40. What was the reason you selected Cymec?
So I think there was a couple of the gold build process that you sort of touched on, the Cymex hub, the services that you demonstrated to us. Suggested that you were going to be obviously a reliable and efficient vendor. So that whole process around moving from paper to a technology-based system, what we couldn't afford to do was then burden our site teams with a very onerous management process at site to send back devices, log issues. So we were very conscious of finding a slick, efficient, effective way of managing the devices once we're out. So we purchased 550 handsets across those 12 sites. Those handsets go out typically at least twice a day, doing all those deliveries. So being realistic, there's going to be a number of devices that do get damaged or have issues. So managing that that process needed to be slick. And I think what Cymex were able to do was demonstrate that the repair returns process was going to be, what we expected. The Cymex hub was a benefit as well. So that was quite a nice sort of add-on that we weren't getting from other people. So I think that package that you demonstrated to us was what sold it for us. And I think I'm pleased to say that since we've gone live, we went live last March. I think that's sort of born to be sort of true. We haven't had any issues or complaints from our sites. Everyone finds login tickets via the Cymex hub to be very quick, simple process, and the devices turn up the next day as expected. So I think from that it's been a good decision, and the service that you promised is one that's been delivered.
Great, good. That's good. I'm glad you said that rather than it's not very good.
I think, but saying not very good. I mean, what I will touch on, I mean, since we've been live, we have had one issue. There was a technical problem with the batteries in some of the devices that we were sent. And I think it's always worth saying what the experience is when you hit an issue. So, I mean, the project went to time, and the project team at Cymex worked well with our central teams. And as we started to roll out multiple sites, there was an issue identified with some batteries. And I think what's good to see is that then the Cymex team went away with the Honeywell team to understand what that problem was and dealt with it very quickly, again, very efficiently, and rectified the situation before it became an operational issue. So it was a technical problem that was sort of identified first, but before it became an operational issue. So, you know, the project hasn't been completely without concerns and that, but generally speaking, we've had the service delivered that we expected, and even when an unforeseen issue arose, that's been dealt with very effectively. Good,
glad to hear it. And finally, what you mentioned what the challenges were at the beginning of this conversation.
Yeah.
Have those challenges been addressed, and what are the benefits of the solution that you've experienced?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, you know, the couple of the ones that I touched on at the front have all been realised. You know, we now have an operation that is visible real time across the whole of our business. So everyone can see the deliveries being made, the information is there. The big benefit for the drivers, having the device in their in-cab mount and the satellite navigation facility that sits alongside it has been a huge benefit. The transition for the drivers has also been, I suppose, much better than we foresaw. In the end, we've trained close to 1,000 people. That's between back office and drivers, and we haven't had really any issues at all with people adopting the handset or the software that sits on there. So from our customers, the experience they get from our deliveries hasn't changed. If anything, it's got better. So there was no disruption to deliveries. So that was a big tick in the box. So a massive sort of change in how we operate didn't result in any interface issues with our customer. And then internally, all of those things that we were expecting have proven to be the case. So having a technology-based solution for the driver with some added benefits now, as well as the delivery notes that we've removed, all our pre-use and post-use vehicle checks are done on the handset, and all that is digitized and retained in the system. And the devices themselves, I say we use the sat nav, or the drivers use the sat nav throughout their journeys. Some of our journeys are sort of up to sort of 10 hours, and there's no issues with battery life and the use of it. So I think all of the items that we were hoping to get out of it, and some of the challenges that we thought might be presented during it, have all been dealt with, and we've ended up with a solution that we're particularly happy with. And again, I think the equipment that we've chosen has borne to be the right choice, and the service from yourselves has helped with that as well.
Great, thanks, Rob. So thanks for sharing all that. That's really insightful, and yeah, glad that it's gone well, and you know, happy to be a part of it, as I'm sure Adam is as well. So that brings us to a close in terms of the main kind of content of the webinar. Hope you've all found it really useful, and now have a better idea of the range of devices and solutions from Honeywell and Cymex, as well as those useful insights from Rob on one of the large delivery fleets in the UK. So we'll move on to the Q&A section. So the first question that we've had is, can Cymex support companies with multiple sites both in the UK and Europe? So yes is the answer to that question. So as Rob's alluded to, we've already got contracts with the likes of Allied Bakeries in the UK that have multiple sites, but we've also got a repair facility in Poland, in Poznan. So that gives us a fairly unique position in our marketplace to be able to have, because we've got an entity either side of the Brexit wall, we're able to support and deliver services and provide the commercial flexibility that customers that are both inside and outside of the UK effectively. So yeah, we can certainly support that. Next question is Honeywell. What do you see as new and emerging technologies in the warehousing and T&L vertical?
For me, Jack, I think there's certainly probably a couple that spring to mind. I see the use of voice. I see that increasing. It's not overly a new technology, but certainly an emerging technology. I think, as I mentioned, we kind of see 25 to 30% efficiency gains by organisations using voice technology. That can also be used in things like maintenance and inspection sort of regime. So it's not purely a sort of warehouse specific. But I think that the use of voice, the ability for operatives, for field engineers to be able to use their hands, and the efficiencies of not looking up and down at a device all the time. I think that's we're going to see more of that. I think the second thing, and this is kind of, I need to be a little bit careful in terms of the amount of information that I share, because it's still under development. But what you will see in the not too distant future is the ability via software to essentially point a device at an object, and the device, the software on it, will be able to tell you dimensions, size of that. That's an issue that we hear from a number of T&L courier organisations, whereby they pass an object onto a third party for onward shipment. That object isn't the size that was sort of stated by the original customer, and then there are penalties, there are additional fees that cannot be recouped from the original sender. So I think just being able to point a device at an object and it give you an accurate reading in terms of the measurements and dimensions of that product. I think you are going to see that in the next 6 months. And I think the final one would be warehouse automation, massive in the US. Still gathering a little bit of momentum over here, but think about a dark warehouse, all run by robotics. The reason that that's gaining a lot of traction is the accuracy that drives. No human error involved, and we all can appreciate the costs of errors made at that stage in the supply chain, and how costly they can be to rectify. So again, that warehouse automation using robotics piece can, I think we're going to see much more of that taken up on this side of the pond. Great,
thanks, Adam. Next question we've got is quite direct, so maybe we'll temper the answer a little bit. But the question is, could Allied Bakeries quantify the cost or efficiency savings of going digital? I'm not expecting a pounds and pence answer to this one, Rob, but you give us maybe an idea.
Yeah, okay. So I suppose substantial would be obviously an answer to that. I mean, the return on investment, less than 2-year payback for us. But I suppose what it's going to differ. I mean, obviously, it depends on how you organise your operation to start with, and what you move to. So, I mean, ultimately, moving to a digital platform allowed us to obviously reduce the size of our administration teams. As I said, the fact that we now got real-time information across the whole of our business was a big win for us. So I think, in simple terms, less than a 2-year payback on our investment.
Yeah, I mean that's significant.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the last question that we've got is, can Shareable support various internal and external compliance policies across organisations? So yes, the answer to that. You can use Shareable to deploy, as I said earlier, pretty much any type of content, be that compliance or HR or health and safety, but also things like corporate messaging. And it's often difficult for the CEO of a large business to get a consistent corporate message out to every employee. Not so difficult with perhaps the office-based colleagues, but when you've got field-based colleagues, it becomes a lot more difficult because they often don't have access to a laptop or PC. So yeah, it's very malleable. It can be used for lots of different things, and I think yeah, a lot of businesses will benefit from it. Oh, we just had one more question pop in. Question directed towards both Rob and Adam. So successful digital transformations can ultimately hinge on user adoption of new processes and ultimately devices. What best practices do you recommend to ensure that post-deployment adoption is successful with the users? Not sure which one of you wants to.
Well, I mean, I'll throw in a starter for 10, and I'm sure that Rob can concur or, yep, or otherwise. I mean, Rob will obviously have an ABF, Allied Bakeries view of how they went about it and how they brought success to the project. Obviously, I can kind of talk around my and our engagement with other end users and how that's kind of been effective. But it kind of really, from my point of view, it really goes back to early engagement with the the actual end users, with the ops guys. Where I've seen projects fail is where devices, processes, whatever the new thing that's being implemented, where it fails is where it's mandated onto the guys who are going to be living and breathing and using the process, the technology, whatever it may be, on a day-to-day basis. It kind of, I think it does sound like potentially a bit more of a long-winded, more onerous process to involve those operational colleagues, but actually their involvement pays dividends in the long run, because I've seen a lot of projects fail whereby the technology, the process, again, whatever it may be, that the new thing that's been implemented has not been accepted. I can think about one manufacturing organization who it wasn't Honeywell technology, but a good few years ago they did exactly that, mandated to the end users on the shop floor, you will use this, and you'll never guess what, the devices weren't used. They procured these devices, I think, 5 years previously to when I was speaking to one of the ops managers there, and they opened up a cupboard, and there they were collecting dust, because it wasn't that they didn't necessarily work, it's that the process and the technology, they hadn't involved the end users in the proof of concept in the pilot stage, and therefore when it came to rollout was just the three just pushed to one side. I don't know, Rob, if you kind of concur with that, whether you've got some similar experiences from Allied Bakeries.
Yeah, so I mean, I sort of touched on our last couple of technology projects. So before we did the transport one, we also did a warehouse project, move into a put to light system. So the approach of introducing technology to what was previously a more manual sort of operation, we took the same approach to both. So we did do some work up front with the site teams, a broad range of people, so guys on the floor, middle management, and the senior management at sites, to document what the workflow should be. So ignore our current process. We're not trying to replicate our current one. We want a new process that's fit for purpose. So what does that look like in the first place? And that helped us develop then the user requirement specification, which is all great and good, but that typically is like 15, 18 months before you actually go live. So things will change. I think the other area that we put a lot of time and attention and focus on was making sure that the process we were developing was almost sort of like fixed and there wasn't an opportunity for the end user to deviate from it. So that adoption, and obviously particularly around that sort of question, how do we make sure that people follow processes and we get the efficiencies, is you almost have to make sure that there's only one way of doing it. But if you go down that path, the one way that you choose needs to be the right way. So that, when it goes back to that front end bit, you really need to get involved in the detail at the front end to ensure the path you're taking, excuse me, is the right one. So what we've ended up with, particularly on the transfer one now, is a process that doesn't have a lot of options for people to deviate from steps. There's a workflow they have to follow, and they can't move from one sort of process to or one step to the next. So that helps ensure that the processes used by all of our sites, all of our users, is consistent. Now, there's still the opportunity for people, they will find ways and work around it. And that comes then down to the sort of post auditing and the control processes you put in. So we have some periodic reviews with our sites, and you have to sort of just back people back in line when you see some small deviations occurring. But for us, what's worked well over the last 2 technical projects is that detailed work up front with the user requirement spec, and developing a workflow that really doesn't allow too much latitude for the end user to deviate from it. And that's allowed us to deliver a consistent process for both the business and our customers, and also deliver our sort of financial targets with a bit of confidence.
Great, sounds good. Well, thank you, everyone. That's all we've got time for, unfortunately. So thanks to all our attendees. Special thanks to our panelists, Adam and Rob, and I hope you join us for our next webinar. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.